President Trump was obviously listening to the show last week when I said we should bomb the Iranian nuclear facilities, because over the weekend, that's exactly what we did. B-2 bombers flew a mission targeting multiple nuclear sites in Iran, potentially crippling the possibility that that terroristic government acquires a nuclear weapon. These planes came straight from my home state of Missouri, the Show Me State, or as we're now known, the Show Me the Boom Boom State. For everyone who was quaking in their boots about war in the Middle East, I hope that you realize that for all their bluster and all their threats, it turns out Iran is a paper tiger. Their response has been impotent, and that would be putting it nicely. There's no need to negotiate a new Iran deal when you simply destroy all of their nuclear capabilities. That's just 4D chess. President Trump, if you're listening, congrats on a great job. A little bird told me that Tulsi Gabbard is on the outs with your administration. So if you're looking for a new director of national intelligence, just know I've got a little availability in my schedule. I'm Tyler Chrestman. Welcome to the Chrestman Conversation. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I have a couple topics that we are going to be talking about this week. We're going to be giving an update on the situation in Iran. Going to talk about the new socialist frontrunner who's leading the mayoral race in New York City. And we're going to make fun of this ridiculous article that was posted by the Associated Press. I know that's going to be hard because they post so many ridiculous things, but you'll see when we pull it up. It's going to be great. Basically, we're just going to make fun of them. It's going to be nice. It's going to be a lot of fun. But, and because I got quite a bit to say about this topic, we're going to jump straight into it here and go topic one, Iran defenestrated. So last week, I said in the intro, I'll say it again. I'll pat myself on the back. I said we should do this last week, and I meant it, and I know I got some pushback. I knew I would because people don't like war hawks. People don't like people who want to flex American muscle. I understand this, but that's me. That's what I think America should do. That's what I think the goal of the American military should be. It's to exert our influence and our dominance around the globe. And I know there's a lot of negativity around the idea of America as a world's policeman, but I want America to be the world's policeman because who else is going to do it? It's going to be America or it's going to be someone else. I like American values. I like what this country stands for. I think it's better. So, did I think it was a good idea for the United States to bomb these facilities in Iran? Absolutely. It's what I was advocating for last week. We had the opportunity. We should take full advantage of it. And over the weekend, we did. Donald Trump ordered the strikes on 3 separate sites that were responsible for Iran's nuclear program. Now, this was good, and it's early still, because I know currently when I'm recording this, I am Thursday, Friday going to be gone. So I'm recording this on Wednesday. So it is currently the 25th. And so it's possible in the next couple of days some information comes out. But as the time I'm recording this, it's still debatable how much damage we actually did for Iran's nuclear program. It's unclear exactly whether or not it's completely obliterated or if it was just more superficial or if they moved their uranium or what the deal is. So we don't really know. I know that we're hearing differing opinions about the extent of the damage. There was a leak from a U.S. intelligence report that suggested that it only would really set Iran back a few months in the process. And immediately that was refuted by just about everybody. So this was leaked. This was leaked by some unknown person. And you know how we feel about that. Whenever an unknown source is your only source on record, I think it's mostly 90% bull. Right? Whatever this is bull. It's probably some low-level staffer who just is saying something that they heard from someone else and blah, 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 blah. It's probably based on nothing. So a couple people were reporting that they didn't really do a lot of damage. Again, the quotes that I was reading in all these articles were basically unnamed, anonymous source who said they're close to the information, and this is and then, again, that's come out, and it's been refuted by basically everyone else. Israeli intelligence came out. They basically came out and said those bases are completely inoperable, that Iran is no longer going to be capable of amping up their nuclear program in any of these bases, and that effectively their quest for a nuclear bomb is off the table, at least for the moment. I know that President Trump, and Pete Hegseth, they also disputed the leaked reports. They basically said, no, we have information on the ground that has already said that this was a massive success. It couldn't have gone any better, and everything went right. So I don't know. I don't know what the truth is. Neither do you. There were some reports that said that Iran basically brought in a bunch of dump trucks and they packed those bases with dirt to prevent them from being completely destroyed. And maybe they carted out a bunch of the uranium. Apparently, a lot of the centrifuges that are used to amp up the or enrich the uranium are also still operable. So we don't really know. I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. Anyone telling you they know, they're lying because no one knows. Okay? So let's play out two scenarios here real quick. One is that it actually worked. Donald Trump and the Israelis were 100% correct and that this destroyed Iran's nuclear capabilities. There's no downside to this scenario. There really isn't, because this is a good thing for the world. I really believe that. I said it last week. I'll say it this week. I'll say it next week if I have to. It doesn't matter. Iran should not have a nuclear bomb. We should not trust them with a nuclear bomb. It would be better if North Korea didn't have one. It would be better if Pakistan didn't have one. It would be better if Russia didn't have them. In fact, it would be better if nobody had them. I would agree with that. I think less people should have them. We shouldn't be adding more countries to the nuclear stockpile or the nuclear enriched countries, whatever you want to call them. We don't need more countries in this group, okay? We already have a couple. I wish they didn't. India probably shouldn't have one. India and Pakistan kind of worry me about whether or not they're going to blow each other up, and by the knock-on effects affect the entire world. We don't know. And so it's good. If Donald Trump is correct, if these bases are inoperable, if Iran can no longer enrich uranium and seek a nuclear weapon, this is a good thing. If they were, and by the way, what Iran has demonstrated, and it's what I was saying before, everyone who was scared about war in the Middle East, I said, this is nonsense. We killed Iran's top general in Donald Trump's first administration, and nothing happened. They fired like 3 slingshots at American bases after calling America up on the phone to say, hey, we're going to kind of throw some stuff by this base. Please don't blow us up. And then basically Donald Trump said, okay, whatever. They threw like 3 rockets into a base. They did no damage. And then they said, we're even, square. It wasn't. They just want to save face. That's kind of what happened. Iran launched this counterattack that did nothing. Killed no one, as far as I'm aware. Or no Americans, I should say. They launched some things at Qatar, and it's like, oh my gosh, Iran, they're gonna do nothing. It's made very clear, Iran doesn't have the power that we thought they did. Their influence in the Middle East has been incredibly degraded because it turns out that most of their influence came from their proxies. And their proxies, all of this military power that we thought Iran has been completely destroyed by Israel after October 7th. Israel has basically taken Iran from what we considered a regional power to nothing. Iran does not exert influence in the region the way that they used to, and that is because they launched this idiotic attack against Israel. Israel basically decapitated Hezbollah, all the leadership. If you look at a chart from, 3 years ago? If you look at a chart from 3 years ago of the leadership structure of Hezbollah, every person who's on that chart is dead. Israel killed all of them. If you look at Hamas doesn't exist the way that it existed 2 years ago. They don't. They have been not completely, but they have almost been completely destroyed. The Houthis are basically fighting everybody, and they've done a terrible job. So Lebanon, Palestine, all of these places that Iran exerted all this influence have just been crippled by Israel. Israel completely destroyed Iran's air force. They have no they have no air defense. We own the sky over Iran. We can do whatever we want, which is why I was saying now's the time to just bomb them, because they couldn't defend it. And Donald Trump obviously knew that. Donald Trump obviously did that. This is a good thing. It's a good thing that Iran, who is one of the largest funders, probably the largest, I should say, the largest funder of terrorism in the world, does not have power anymore. It's a good thing that the largest terrorist organization in the world, which is the Iranian government, doesn't have the power that they think they did. And I think that that's a good thing. I know there's going to be a lot more updates, and we're going to see the knock-on effects of this and what happens. But like I was predicting, Iran does not have the power to fight the United States. We have to be careful of terrorism. But we had to worry about that from Iran before. It's not as though terrorism is a new threat from Iran. It's been a threat. So they could activate some terrorist cells. I am sure, by the way, listen to me here. Listen carefully. I am sure that there are Iranian terrorists in the United States right now. I believe that there are people here sleeper cells from the Iranian government that exist. It's always a possibility that they were going to be activated. So it's possible that we're going to see terrorist attacks. But Iran, the power that we thought they have, the illusion of that power is gone. It's gone throughout the world. Their Middle East proxies have been destroyed. Their military power has been shown to be lackluster at best. They couldn't defend themselves against an Israeli strike force, an air force that deployed to destroy all of their ground defenses. They do not have what we thought they had, which is a very strong military. If you would have looked at the rankings, if you want to call it the rankings, of most powerful militaries in the world, obviously the United States is 1, China would probably be 2. We thought Russia was probably 3, and you're looking at Iran is probably in the top 5. They're not. It's not a case anymore that we think of Iran having a great military. They don't. It has been very, very clear that they do not have the military capabilities that we thought they did. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing they don't have a bomb. It's a good thing Donald Trump did this. We can't say too much about it because I don't know what it's going to be. What I know it's not going to be is war in the Middle East. There's no appetite for this. Nobody's talking, maybe the Israeli government, but nobody's talking about a regime change war in the United States. Americans aren't going to have boots on the ground in Iran. We're not going to be ground fighting. We're not going to go in there and try and take it over and plant democracy. That was never the goal. The goal was to do exactly what we did. Blow up their nuclear capabilities and then declare peace. That's what Donald Trump did. In the same tweet, it's amazing, or Truth, whatever you want to call it, Post, I don't know, whatever he calls it on Truth Social. Donald Trump put up one of the greatest posts I've ever seen in my life. It basically said, "We've done it. We attacked Iran and we blew up all their nuclear facilities. Now's the time for peace." It's like launching an attack against somebody. I punch you. I punched you in the face. And then I said, "Now's the time for peace," before you even respond. It's amazing. I love it. But it's true because Donald Trump can do that because what's Iran going to do? And I know it sounds like a bully mentality, and maybe it is a little bit, but remember, Iran isn't some skinny nerd that we're pushing into a locker. If we're going to bully Iran, realize that we're bullying Osama bin Laden. Now, he didn't work for Iran, but that's who they are. You, in your mind, when you think of terrorism, you think of Osama bin Laden. That's what the entire Iranian government is. They fund terrorism throughout the world. And you don't know the names of all the people, like you know the name of Osama bin Laden, but that's what they're doing. They're funding those kind of people, the people who want to destroy America. They fund them throughout the world. So when we are going to exert our influence, when we want to bully Iran, realize it's not the Iranian people who are lovely. The Persians are some of the best people in the entire world, but the Iranian government is one of the worst things to happen to the Iranian people. The Iranian people don't like their government. And I think it's a good thing. I thought this was a good thing, but we're not going to see American troops there fighting Iran. We're not going to see that. We've won. We did what we wanted to do. We pushed that nerd into the dirt. And now, you know what? They're not going to do anything because we're bigger, we're stronger, and we can do this. And so they have to just basically stand up, stiff upper lip. They fired a couple missiles at us to do nothing. Again, same deal. They got on the phone and said, "We got to do this, but please don't crush us." And Donald Trump said, "I don't care." They fired a couple missiles. Donald Trump basically said, "Yeah, they called us up on the phone. They're begging like a dog that they could just shoot a missile to save face, but you know what? Screw those guys." And he basically just called them out online and said exactly what they did. They fired a couple missiles. They'll say, "We struck back at America. We're big and tough." They're not. We know this now. We know it's a good thing. All right, this is a good thing. We know Iran is weak. The same way that when Russia invaded Ukraine, it actually opened the eyes of the world to the fact that the Russian military, who everyone really respected, was weak. They were weaker than we thought they were because the Ukrainians actually did significant damage, slowed their advance through the country where they thought they were just going to steamroll in and take that country over in a week. And it turned out that they couldn't. And when they couldn't, it would surprise a lot of people in the world. And so it's the same thing that just happened with Iran this past week, where someone who was thought of as a great military threat, it turns out that for the past, 50 years that we feared what Iran is going to do, it turns out they're not capable of doing much. And we don't need to negotiate with terrorists. This idea that we were going to negotiate some sort of a deal with them was always nonsense. It always was, and it always will be, and now we don't need to. Donald Trump basically said, "You don't want to negotiate with me? fine. You don't get to have your toys. You don't want to play with me. You don't want to share the sandbox. You don't get to play with anything. I'm going to blow it up. So he took the toys and ripped the head off the G.I. Joe and threw it away. And that's what he did. He blew up the nuclear facilities. It's a great thing. I'm very happy, very excited about this development. But like I said, we're going to follow this up with more information. I know I just talked for 15 minutes about things, basically just saying, I don't know the extent of this, neither do you. But it is important to understand that this is a good thing. And I know there are people who disagree with me. As always, put it in the comments. Let me know why I'm wrong, because I always try and take the other side into account. The people who say that this was a bad idea. We shouldn't be doing this. Oh, the other thing, that's the one other point I want to make real quick. The other point of the other side, who's saying Donald Trump violated his constitutional authority. He doesn't have the authority to do this. Only Congress can authorize these strikes. Only Congress can declare war, blah, blah, blah. This is absolute nonsense. They're already talking about impeaching Donald Trump again. Oh, he broke his constitutional authority. We're going to impeach him. What an original idea. I can't believe it. Why did no one think of this before? They're going to impeach him for the 80th time. Donald Trump absolutely had the constitutional authority to do this. Make no mistake about it. I know what you're saying. Oh, but the War Powers Act that he's citing from the 70s, it didn't give him the authority to do this, except that everyone has used this same act. Every president, with the exception of Jimmy Carter, has used this since the 70s. So if you're going to tell me he didn't have the constitutional authority, but Reagan did, and the first George W. Bush did, and Bill Clinton did, and the second George Bush did, and Barack Obama did, and Joe Biden did, and Donald Trump in his first term did, but now it's too much. This time, he violated his constitutional authority, and we're going to impeach him. Grow up, all right? Don't be a child. That is not the way it works. You can't say that for the past 50 years, everyone has got to use this, but Donald Trump went too far. It doesn't work that way. It's silly, and it's childish, really, to think that you get to determine what is constitutional and what's not when for 50 years we've done something one way, and you are going to say, no, you don't get to do it that way because it's not constitutional. As far as I'm aware, maybe if the Supreme Court should decide whether it's constitutional or not, because for 50 years, if it's been precedent, it sounds like it's pretty constitutional to me. If no one's managed to overturn this idea, then that's it. That's the way that it's interpreted. That's the way that it's used. That's constitutional. He can use his War Powers Act to fire somebody. He has 60 days of authorization and 30 days to withdraw troops. He could deploy troops anywhere in the world for 60 days. Donald Trump has that authority without declaring war, without doing anything else. He doesn't need congressional approval to do this. And the executive branch has the ability to flex foreign policy muscle. That is one of their primary functions. So anyone talking about the constitutionality of that's tripping me up there. Anyone who's talking about that needs to understand that it's not a controversial issue among people who have looked into this subject, that to say that this is unconstitutional. It's really not. And like I said, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of the war powers that Donald Trump is granted and what that means from the Constitution standpoint. You do not need a declaration of war by Congress to do attacks in other countries. You don't. Now, for a full-scale ground invasion, you should get them. And what you see is that George Bush actually did this. We didn't technically declare war, but he got congressional approval for the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan. But that's not what this is. It's not an invasion. We don't have ground troops being deployed. You do not need congressional authority to conduct foreign policy, and that includes strikes. It does. So we're not at war with Iran, as already Donald Trump said, no, peace, peace, peace. And so this is not a constitutional issue whatsoever. And the people trying to impeach Donald Trump over it are children. They need to grow up. Anyway, like I said, more information to come after we know the extent of what the damage is to Iran's arsenal. And obviously we don't yet, so more to follow. Anyway, okay, topic 2, why can't New York figure it out? In the latest, least surprising development of our lifetimes, the Democrats in New York City elected a socialist as their candidate for mayor in the primary. What a shock. They made a terrible decision. Who would have thought that the Democrats in New York City would do this? It's such a dumb thing. This guy's name is, and I don't want to mispronounce his first name. I'm pretty sure it's Zoran Mamdani is the way he pronounces it. So Mamdani is a 33-year-old. He's a state assemblyman in New York, and he would be the first Muslim mayor to ever be elected if he was elected to New York City mayor. Which, okay, whatever. I don't care, but I guess it's a big deal. This guy, Mamdani, has a history of being completely useless professionally. That's what he is. He's a professional, completely useless person. He's 33 years old. As far as I'm aware, he has not really ever had a real job. He seems to have, he graduated college in 2014 and then kept going to college until 2018 when he became an American citizen. So he basically, doing the math there, right? So he's 33. So he went to college till his late 20s. He got a job, it sounded like, for a couple years doing something. And then he decided he's going to run for a state assemblyman, and then he became an assemblyman. So he's never worked a real job. He basically just went to school through his whole 20s and then became an assemblyman. Never done anything, never worked a job, never really built anything or done anything useful or productive in his life. He was a failed rapper. Isn't that great? And he's just a spoiled rich kid. His parents are both kind of rich and famous. His dad was a professor of Columbia, and his mom is a famous film director. I see a lot of movies. I've never seen anything that she's done, but apparently she's pretty well regarded. I'm unfamiliar with her work, but that's cool. But it's basically just a spoiled rich kid and professional useless person who also happens to be an out-and-out socialist. And New York City, listen, just do better. I don't understand why you think this guy is the way to go. The fact that this guy beat Andrew Cuomo in a primary speaks volumes. It speaks really volumes about two things. How much Cuomo hurt his legacy with his stupid scandals, and how dumb the Democratic Party voters are in New York City. Mamdani won 44% of the vote in the first round of the primary. Cuomo had just 36% of the vote, but the former governor actually dropped out after the first round because he saw there was going to be no path to victory. This other guy was going to win the primary. And it's just amazing to me because here's what New York voted for. I'm going to show you, and I don't want to mischaracterize anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you his website so we can go through it together and we can talk about this guy. This guy might be the mayor of the largest city in the United States. So this is him, Zohran Mamdani. Okay, we're not going to go over any of this. What I want to just show you is the platform. So this is his website, okay? This is not me. This is not somebody putting the fake website up. This is his website where he fundraises, and this is his platform, all the things he believes in. Housing. He wants to freeze the rent, okay? So he's going to rent control in New York City. Now, here's these two things right here, back to back. Freeze the rent, build affordable housing, crack down on bad landlords. Okay. Let me just collect my thoughts here. Who thinks this is a good idea? In 2025, how do you not understand that this is a terrible idea? These two things next to each other are just hilarious to me. Rent control is one of the reasons why housing is so expensive. And you say to yourself, Tyler, you're blowing my mind. What do you mean? Rent control keeps the rents low. Rent control does one thing. Imagine this. Let's just use my house as an example. Imagine this was an apartment. So imagine I didn't own it. I was renting this place. And I rent this, and every year I basically have a negotiation with my landlord because the cost of living's gone up, inflation's gone up, whatever it is. The landlord every year, when I go to renew my lease, he has the option to increase my rent. He can tell me. He says, hey, I'm going to increase the rent, or whatever, however long it is in your contract. Could be 6 months, could be a year. He says, I'm going to increase the rent because this place actually is worth more money now, and I'm going to increase the rent because all of these factors, X, Y, and Z. So he does that, and I can either pay it or I can move. And those are my options. And we have a negotiation, and that's the negotiation. The negotiation is either I pay the increase because I think this place is worth it, or I move to somewhere cheaper because I need to, because I can't afford it, or I don't want to pay that much, whatever the course is. And what happens here? Well, part of the increase in that should go towards keeping this place maintained because it is expensive to maintain housing. This is why you wind up with slumlords. When people pay a low amount of money to live in a place that is bad because the landlord isn't making a ton of money. He's not making millions of dollars to keep a place terrible. A place like this would cost a lot of money, but also I would have high expectations because it costs a lot of money. And so we have a negotiation. If The government comes in and tells this guy he's no longer allowed to increase the rent. All of the costs around him still rise. Inflation still exists. The cost of housing around him still goes up. And this guy winds up losing money, or he no longer will make money on this property. And what happens when you can't make money? If you realize that you're going to lock into something when they freeze the rent, what are you not going to do? You're not going to view apartments as investments. People don't buy them. People don't rent them. People don't build them. So what happens is the rent actually goes up and up and up because the cost of housing goes up and up and up. And the reason this is because people no longer build housing for people, and people no longer want to buy places that already exist from owners. They don't want to take over these jobs because they realize they're no longer a profitable enterprise. So the cost of housing directly goes up when you try and rent control places because the supply dwindles. The supply dwindles because no one builds because it's no longer an investment. This is how supply and demand works. When you artificially shrink the supply, the demand remains constant, prices go up. Rent control is part of the reason why New York City is so expensive, because rent control in that city on certain apartments means that you can't kick people out because they're paying $400 to live in an apartment in New York that would cost them thousands and thousands of dollars if they rented it out today. So your grandma who lives in some apartment in New York pays a lower price. All of the housing is restricted because no one moves. No one is actually making any money on these buildings, and no one wants to build new things. New York City is a bit of an exception in certain places because it's such a gigantic city that it's run a little differently. But this is what happens everywhere. Everywhere you do rent control, prices go up because you cannot artificially shrink the supply while the demand either remains constant or go up and have the prices stay the same. You can't artificially control it from the top down because one of the problems we run into is that we don't have enough housing. And if we build less, we have less. That's kind of the way it works. So your plan is you're going to freeze the rent and you're going to build affordable housing. So you're going to come in and you're going to build tenement housing. That's the plan. You're going to freeze rent. No independent people are going to build and maintain this. So you say, well, the government has to come in. So you're going to build cinder block affordable housing. We call those the projects in America. Okay. They don't work and they're not nice. All right. No one wants to live in the projects. And there's a reason for that. Because they're shitty, okay? There's no way to put it nicely. There's no way to church up the language. They're shitty. Government housing is not fun. So it's a terrible idea. This is just his first thing he wants to do. A Department of Community Safety. Okay, we usually call this the police. What does this say? This says, oh, the police are great. Yeah, but they also are terrible. So what we need is a new government agency that is basically community policing. They're going to just respond to certain calls instead of the police. Again, a terrible idea by someone who has no idea what they're talking about. Anything that the police go on, by the way, I've seen this personally. I don't know, 1,000 times. I don't know how many hundreds of times at least that I've gone on calls with the police for people in mental health or people in these other issues. You need the police. You can't. What are you going to do? You're going to send someone before any mental health call that comes out, the police have to show up to the scene. Why do the police have to show up to the scene? Because they have to make the scene safe because they have weapons. They have guns. They have pepper spray. They have tasers. They have things that other people don't. I do not respond to those on the fire truck. This community safety team, what are they going to do? They're going to show up without the police to the house of somebody who's having a mental health crisis and put themselves in danger. You'd have to be a moron to volunteer for this. And it's just a terrible idea. Another government safety committee. Dumb, dumb, dumb. How about this? City-owned grocery stores. Yes, this is a great idea that hasn't been tried in every communist country ever and failed miserably. We're going to let the city of New York price control food in the city. What a dumb idea. Again, this is not a new idea. It's not brilliant. It didn't just spark out of his imagination. This has been tried everywhere. You cannot price control and expect it to work. It doesn't work. It just makes things more expensive or it leads to shortages because the government, every day that you interact with somebody in a capitalist society, you are having, let's use bread. Bread is an example. If I buy bread, the store charges a certain price, $3. $3 for a loaf of bread. I come in, I pay my $3 for a loaf of bread. The next day, the store tries to charge me $3.50 for bread. I say, I'm not going to buy your bread. I go next door. They sell bread for $3.05. I'm going to buy bread from there. This place is going to say, oh no one's buying my $3.50 bread. They're going to have to regulate themselves because that's the way it works. They can't all band together because there's competition in the marketplace. And the price point is set by the consumer because I'll pay $3 for bread. I won't pay $4 for bread. This place has to adjust to my needs, but they do this by the millions because millions of people go to buy bread. And so there's a million price points on bread, what people will and won't buy. In the market, it goes like this for every single product in every single aisle of that store because the market dictates the price. It costs a certain amount to produce. So let's say it costs $1 to produce that bread, and it costs another $1 to ship that bread. So the bread costs $2 to wind up in the store, and the store charges $3 to make a little bit of a profit. There's a profit point that people will pay and won't pay. I won't pay $20 for bread. You can't charge $2 for bread because you make no money. Somewhere in between $2 and $20 is the price point that people pay. And the millions and millions of people who buy bread dictate that point. When the government comes in and says bread is $4, what happens? No one buys bread. No one will buy bread from the government-owned stores, or you're going to subsidize certain industries over other industries, so you're going to favor some corporations over other corporations, or you're going to have to undercut your competitors and drive out other business because no one's going to buy your $4 government bread because it's not going to cost $3 to get the bread and do the same $2 price and then put it on the shelves and have a controlled point that I just set arbitrarily as one person because I'm not going off the market. I'm going off what the government dictates. It's the same thing with medications and all these different things where I say, all right, here's how much it costs me as a government employee to bring the bread here. It's actually $2.50 because we have to add this layer of bureaucracy in it. And then we're going to have to make a certain amount of profit to justify this program. So I'm going to charge $3.50 and that's the price point for bread. And bread now costs $3.50. It's not negotiable with the government. The government doesn't adjust to people. So the bread is either going to have to be undercut and the government will sell it at a loss, which means that we're actually paying for it with tax money, or you're going to run to a spot where these things just utterly fail. Or you're going to have the worst of both worlds, which is the government undercuts competition, drives out private business, and then, or just worst case scenario, takes it over. And then you're going to have a price point for bread that you don't want to pay because they're going to set it because they need to make a profit the same way that you do. It's a terrible idea. It never works. None of this ever works. And it's been tried before. This is not a new idea. Like I said, it's not a new idea. It's a terrible idea. And this guy thinks it's a great idea because he's a professional, useless person who never does anything. Oh, free buses. That'll be nice. Fighting corporate exploitation. I didn't even click on this one. I don't even know what this is, but I'm sure it's silly. No-cost childcare. Explain to me. There's no such thing as no cost. No cost means we're going to tax people for it. That's what it means. It means actually your taxes are going to pay for it. So me, as a person with no children, I'm going to pay for your childcare. Tell me why I should. Explain to me. Explain to me why you can come to my house. You can take money out of my pocket and you get to pay for your children. I don't understand it. I didn't have your children. I don't raise your children. You raise your children. If you can't afford your children, don't have your children. Okay? It's not my business. I don't think it's the government's job to do anything with childcare. It's your responsibility. And I don't, a baby basket for newborn babies. Whatever. Okay? Taxing corporations and the 1%. Here's how we pay for it. Okay? This is the brilliant plan. What it really is that rich people aren't paying their fair share. We've never heard that before. Oh my gosh, why didn't we think of that? If we just tax the rich and corporations and more money, then we'll all make money. Except this, New York raised taxes on the 1% in the last 10 years. What happened? You saw more wealth move out of New York City down to Florida than you've seen in history. Because all these rich people are not going to pay your stupid taxes for your stupid programs. Because guess what? The 1% disproportionately pays all the taxes. Here's something you probably don't understand. The top 10% of earners in this country pay 50% of all of the taxes. Okay? That, by the way, includes me. I pay, the people in my income bracket pay for half of all of the taxes in the entire country. The top 50%, so the top 50% of people pay almost all of it. I think it's I think it's 90%. It might be 99% actually. The bottom 50% of people do not pay taxes. So right now, what you're talking about, if you want to tax people who aren't paying net taxes, tax the poor people. That would actually be an ideal thing, because right now you're saying we're going to tax the 1%. The 1%, by the way, I think pays 10% of all the taxes. Just the 1%. They're paying 10% of all the revenue to the United States already. Why are they not paying their fair share? If 1% is paying for 10% and the other 9% are paying for 50%, then explain to me how the rich people don't pay their fair share. It's such a stupid idea that, again, is based on nothing, absolutely nothing. It's based on no data, nothing he can say that is going to do this. Oh, we're going to make green schools. We're going to protect the LGBTQAI plus minus sign, ampersand, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Here's another brilliant one. Raise the minimum wage to $30 by 2030. Again, this is what New York votes for. They want to raise the minimum wage. We're not even going to go into it because of where we are. Trump-proofing New York City. Donald Trump is the worst, blah, 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 blah. So this is, why do people think that socialism is a good idea? This guy, by the way, I'm just going to say it. I think he's an anti-Semite. He wouldn't denounce the phrase globalize the intifada. Okay. And then he wanted to cry about it. He went on. He said, I'm not an anti-Semite. People hurt my feelings when they call me an anti-Semite. And my life has actually been threatened, people, and I'm the victim, even though I don't like Jews. Blah, blah, blah. So, politicians crying is disgusting to me. Be a man. And so this is what New York votes for. They vote for anti-Semitism and socialism. And I think we give it to them. I really do. Just let him have this guy. I hope he wins. I hope he becomes the new face of the Democratic Party so everyone sees how terrible their ideas are, because all of them, you could go through any one of those little checkpoints and I could just say bad, 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 bad. But here's why. And like, read a book, like one book, please. You spent a decade in college, and I don't know exactly what your degree is in, but you spent a decade in college. I hope you read a book, and maybe a good book like Thomas Sowell or F.A. Hayek or somebody read some economics that, other than Marx, that will help you understand the world just a little bit. It would be nice. Anyway, I wish that people understood why these ideas were bad, and they don't, because people get up there and they talk and they sound nice, right? Like, there's nothing better than coming out and saying, I want to take care of the poor, I want to take care of people, I want to help New Yorkers. Like, this is great. I want to help the poor too. I don't want there to be poor people. I don't want anyone to discriminate against anyone. I don't want anyone to live a life of sadness or depression or hardship. I don't want that. Nobody does. It's a straw man to say that you are the only person who cares about the poor. But when your ideas is, what we need to do is just redistribute the money. What we need to do is just print more money. What we need to do is just make everybody rich. It doesn't work that way. And it's been tried, and it always leads to heartbreak. So anyway, you know what? Wow, I ranted way too long about those two topics. And I want to I'm not going to do a thing on this, but I want to talk about this topic 3 and make fun of this real fast because it made me laugh. I saw this. I was looking for topics today to talk about on the podcast. And I saw this article, and I just want to rip it. Just look at how dumb this is. This is from the AP. The headline is, "The emotional toll of climate change is broad-ranging, especially for young people." I clicked on it. I said, what is this about? So it's by this lady, Liana. It looks like Italy. I don't know. I'm just going to read little pieces of it. "Anxiety, grief, anger, fear, helplessness. The emotional toll of climate change is broad-ranging, especially for young people." Oh, my God. A daily grind of climate anxiety and distress can lead to sleeplessness and inability to focus, and worse, some young people wonder whether it's more to bring children into the world. Oh my God. Are people so fragile? Really, if you're raising a child and your young person in your life, whether they're 20 or whether they're 2, is nervous about climate change, you've done bad. You've done poor parenting. I know it sounds judgmental. It is. You have given your anxiety to children, which is a bad thing to do. You need to project strength and confidence in your life, because inculcating insecurity and nervousness and anxiety into your children that's on you as a parent. I mean, you need to own a little bit of that. There is no reason that People need to, the daily grind of climate anxiety. Oh my God, I'm so sleepless because the climate is getting slightly warmer. In 100 years, it might click up a few degrees. Yeah, again, this is one of those things. Grow up. And then she gives recommendations, what to do. You get active in your community. If you feel isolated, you need to find like-minded people. Get out in nature, blah, 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 blah. This one's great. Make a positivity sandwich. So the idea of a positivity sandwich is where you begin with a good piece of news, then you follow it by a harder tidbit, and then you finish with a second feel-good story. So I'm going to read a story about a puppy, and then I'll read one about a mudslide that happened in Indonesia, and then I'll read another story about a puppy, and my life will be better. Again, grow up. If the news is depressing to you, stop reading it. This one's great. Model behaviors for your kids. Yes, model behaviors for your kids, like strength and confidence and not being an insecure little weasel. Phoebe Gu, 39, gave up a cushy job in health technology to work on an MBA with a focus on sustainability. She makes sponges. And then she says, this is a quote. This is a real quote from the AP. I am generally a very happy person and very optimistic, and I'm still that. But sometimes it becomes very difficult to manage. Like what will happen and thinking about the long term. At points, I've regretted bringing a child into this world, knowing that things could get much, much worse. How would you like it if your mom said that to the Associated Press? Yeah, I regret this kid because of the climate change, obviously, because, it might get hotter in 100 years. You never know. Jesus Christ. Like, what's wrong with you? I don't understand. Anyway, I just wanted to say, people, calm down. It's okay. I promise. It's going to be fine. I'm not saying climate change isn't real. The climate warms. The climate cools. 10,000 years ago, we had an ice age, followed by a period of rapid heating of the earth. Then we cooled off, and then we've heated up. And I get it. It goes back and forth. The idea that man-made climate change is going to cause humanity to go extinct is not real. I'm letting you know. It's not because I am some sort of science denier, but just look at the actual science and then tell me that. Look, actually, what you should do is go back to the year 2000 and read the predictions and see the predictive models and how bad they've been in the last 25 years. They are really bad. And the goals change and the timelines change. And because of that, you shouldn't say that we're going to project 100 years in the future and say we know what's going to happen. We couldn't predict 20 years in the future from the 2000s. It's not like in 100 years we're going to say, we figured it out. No, we thought the ozone layer, the hole in the ozone was going to kill us. We thought that the temperature increasing was going to cause more human deaths. We thought that deforestation was going to lead to less trees on the planet. There are more trees on the planet today than there were 100 years ago. Okay? So, again, this will all be mitigated. We'll figure it out. Okay? Anyway, I get a little ranty. I'm going to leave it there for the week. As always, questions, comments, concerns. Tell me where I'm wrong below. Please, 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 please. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm right. Tell me that you love me. Tell me that you hate me. I want to hear it all. Leave a comment. And I will catch you guys next Friday.